Okay, and we'll restart again. So one thing I look at there is that there is a trend. The number of women decreases over this time and the number of men increases over this. Well, it's not over time, but it's kind of like the level of education. University is the highest level here. And kindergarten, nursery and preschool is the lowest level. So as the level of education gets higher, there are fewer women and more men. That is a very clear trend. If you got your pen and drew a line there, you would see that trend. Okay, so how can we report that? So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to show you a good and a bad example. So again, pause your video at home, take a couple of minutes to read through these two ones, and let me know which one you think is the good and which one is the bad video. Okay, and coming back. So first of all, let's have a look at some of the things we can see here. It is clear that as the level of education increases, the percentage of male teachers also increases. So, fairly broad one there. Looking at all the levels of all the different kinds of education. We come down here in nursery school. One sentence about nursery school. One sentence about primary school. One sentence about secondary school. One second sentence about college. So yes, this second paragraph is terrible. It has lots of mistakes, lots of problems. Pardon me. The other thing you'll see is things like this. This is because women are good with children. Opinion. You cannot give opinions. This graph here does not tell us why women do that. That data does not tell us that. We have not studied that. We haven't done research on that. So we cannot say that it's because women are good with children. Maybe it's true, but we have to go and study that separately. Okay, another thing. This starts with but at the beginning of a sentence and has some very short sentences there. Women also teach more in secondary school, but it is much closer. These are short sentences. Here we have longer sentences. So this talks about how nursery, kindergarten, primary school feature female teachers strongly outnumber male teachers, but then this switches around by university. Excuse me a moment. Okay. So this compares men to women, the early levels of education to later levels of education, and it still gives some details, some numbers there. So clearly this is a broader paragraph with better connections and comparisons between the different things in the graph. Okay, let's move on now and look at pie charts. Well, with pie charts, there's not many differences. There's usually 2, 3, or 4 pie charts. I think I've seen one that has 6. And sometimes I've seen pie charts compared to a table or a graph, another kind of graph. But generally, if we're just looking at pie charts, we see different things here. Often it's divided by year or by place. Yemen versus Italy. Yemen is a country in the Middle East. And this is by school spending, but again in 3 different years. So most commonly it's divided by year or place, although sometimes it could be something else. Okay, so we're going to look at this one in a moment. So when we look at this one, the first thing I look at goes, oh, there's not a big difference. Oh yeah, there's a bit of a difference. So that I don't even know what these things are. We don't need to know. It doesn't matter. Blue is always pretty high, but orange overtook it. Yeah. Gray was the second highest here, but dropped down to the smallest. So these are the kind of things we're doing. We could kind of say that these two switched places. And that this one was always very high, but it dropped into second place. You could say that the 4 expenditures are fairly balanced there. Like the money is spent on the 4 areas fairly balanced. No, there's no one dominant sector, you could say. If we have a look down at this one, we can see that green was always the biggest. That's clear. First of all, green was always the biggest. That's one thing. But we need to look further. Red says salaries. Green is salaries. So actually, we're putting red and green together, but we can see that while teachers' salaries remained the highest and actually increased a bit, then fell, other workers' salaries fell throughout each period. Okay, you could say that insurance was always the smallest, and that resources and furniture, which are kind of two similar things, both took up about 30%, between 25 and 30% each time. Whereas they were equal here. In this year, they spent more on resources and books, but this year it swapped around so that they spent more on furniture and equipment. But the main thing is there, you see that I'm comparing things. I'm looking at the two different kinds of salaries together. I'm looking at resources and furniture together. I'm trying my best to always look at the whole picture. Sometimes for a pie chart, it can be difficult to see a pattern across the whole of all of the graphs. When we look at this one, however, the first thing that jumps out at you is the color. The black color is the most dominant color. Not the highest in every graph. We see here that the stripy one is higher, but generally the black one, which is 15 to 59-year-olds, is the biggest group. Okay. Then we're going to look at some other things. We see that the stripy one is getting smaller here, and it's getting smaller here. That is children 0 to 14-year-old. Okay. So we can see that the populations are getting, the number of children is getting smaller. We see these 60 years and over, even though it's only a small percentage in Yemen, is getting bigger, and it's also getting bigger in Italy. So we can see that there's less children, more people over 60. So we can say that the population is aging. The average age is growing there. And even though for Italy, the number of 15 to 59-year-olds fell, it was only because there was more people over 60. So definitely the average, sorry, moving my phone again to check the bottom corner of the screen. So even though there's fewer 15 to 59-year-olds, it's very clear that the average age is getting higher. Another important thing you might not see clearly is this says 2050. Okay, that's the future. So the language and the grammar you use is very different. So for this one, I've got two BPs. I've got my first BP is the broad one. It is clear that in all four times, 15 to 59-year-olds hold a very high percentage, though not always the highest. I mentioned that, here it's not the highest, but overall it's the highest. In Yemen, children under 14 are also highly common, whereas for Italy, it's the over 60s that are more prevalent. Okay, so this has more children, this has more old people. And then I'm saying the average age of both countries is predicted to grow by 2050. Okay, it says 40. Okay, so I'm saying that there. That could actually be your first one if I wanted to. Now, looking particularly at Yemen, they have just over half their population under 14, which is over 3 times the rate in Italy. Now, that's an important thing to notice. Even though I'm saying, well, I'm focusing on Yemen, but I'm still comparing it to Italy. I'm not just going to write about Yemen. There's comparisons there. We can compare them together. Okay, so, and then I'm saying that they had half their population was over 14 here, but that dropped to 37 when the 15 to 59-year-olds dominate. So I include a comparison to Italy, but mostly I'm comparing this graph to this graph. Okay, in my next sentence, I'm comparing Italy here to Italy here. I'm not going to go through all of that sentence, but it's the same thing. I'm comparing it to Yemen in the middle, and I'm doing lots of comparisons, doubles, compared to, much higher rate. That language is important. We are comparing the two things. Always comparing, looking at changes and trends, not writing about one thing by itself. Okay, so if you want to take more time to read through that, and again, signposting language, looking at, as for, when we analyze, what's more, lots of signposting language there. If you want to read through that and record some of that language and have a look at that, please pause the video now, or you can come back and look at that after the video. Finally, tables for today. So we're covering a lot today. Like I said, these videos, by the way, this is my first kind of series of videos put on this website. So we're making 10 for speaking, we're going to do 10 for writing. And later on, I'm going to get your feedback and see what people say. And depending on what you guys want from me, I will continue to make more videos. But for now, we're going to do the series of 10 and 10 and go from there and see how things progress. So the final area today, tables. Again, here's 3 different kinds of tables. Sometimes there will be 2 tables with different things. I've actually seen one with 3 separate small tables. But of course, then the tables have less information. We see the ones that often have the years across the top, or it could be like an age group or another category. Okay, so in a moment, we are going to look at the kindergarten one, this one down here. So first we can see these 2. Oh, you can't see this one very clearly, so I won't talk about that too much. I will, however, tell you that the main thing is this is coffee and banana sales. When you see the numbers, you'll see that total banana sales was always higher than total coffee sales in both years. But for both coffee and bananas, there's much higher sales in 2004, with all of them increasing except for these 2, which go smaller. Sorry if you can't see that. Don't worry, we're not focusing on that one. This one's a bit more difficult because we can say that there's no dominant area. You know, there's different dominance there. We can say that the main thing is here that there's clearly a different amount of employment for different age groups, with people over 40 much more likely to work in manufacturing or government, whereas for people 18 to 25, they're much more likely to work in retail or other areas. By the way, when you see other, always remember that's not the most important thing. Other means many, many numbers smaller than 2. The fact that there's got 2 and 3 here means accountancy is more common than any job within other. So other could be many, 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 many other areas put together. Okay, so by itself, other is never going to be your main feature. You can put it in there, but it won't be your starting main feature. It will be later on. Okay. Whereas for the 25 to 40-year-olds, it's much more balanced between education, health, local government, and manufacturing there. So these are the kind of things you might look at there, which are the dominant areas for different age groups. Okay, but we're going to have a look in the last couple of minutes at this one here. Now, for this time, I thought I'd do something different. I'm not going to show you what we write. I'm going to show you what I would do if I'm in the IELTS test. I have that piece of paper. I have my pencil. I'm going to attack that table with my pencil. And I'm not going to go like attack it like that. I'm going to find important information. So I'm looking down at that table. It's about homeschooled students. By the way, homeschooled means they don't go to school. Their parents teach them at home, and they do not go to school. Quite common in America, not so common in many other countries. It has its advantages and disadvantages. So looking at the statistics, though, one of the first things I'm going to do is start, well, there's a lot of numbers there. I need to start circling or something to help me out here. The first thing is I'm going to look at, okay, from 1999 to 2004, where's the highest numbers? Okay, that's the highest in 99, 2000, 2001. Oh, hang on. Ah, yeah. Kindergarten was the highest every year. Now, in that situation, maybe if there was 1 year where it wasn't kindergarten, that would still be worth reporting. That in every year or almost every year, kindergarten had the highest number of homeschooled children. Okay, the second thing we're going to look is comparing grade by grade. Okay, so let's see. In kindergarten, it was 2004. In grade 1, it was 2004. Grade 3 and 4, it was 2004, 2004, 2004. Wow. Again, we see another clear trend that not only did kindergarten always have the highest percentage of homeschooled children, and listen to my language, by the way, I'm using the language you should be writing. So not only did kindergarten have the highest proportion of homeschooled children during every one of those years, but for all of the grades, the highest percentage was in 2004. Let's have a look at what happened throughout that time. Kindergarten. numbers go up, 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 flat, up. Okay, so over time it's increasing. Grades 1 to 2. Over time it's increasing. Over time it's increasing. Over time it's increasing. Only twice did it drop there. And that's what I'm going to be throwing in. So I might do that. That might take you 1 minute or less than 1 minute to do that. It should not take you long. Just to quickly circle the highest, circle the highest, circle the highest, do the arrows. Don't make it so messy you can't read it, but that can help you. After you've done that, you can clearly see the trend of increasing. This is the highest and this is the highest. And so those are things you're going to put in your writing. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and because time is up for this video. So once again, if you have any questions about anything we said today or about what you would like me to talk about in our 10th video in this series, please let me know and I'll do my best to answer those questions in the future. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.